Declaro aberta a 10ª Cúpula
I declare
P20
open the
inaugurados
10th
os seus
P20
trabalhos.
and
Compõe a
opening
mesa com
the
essa
session
presidência o
with this
excelentíssimo
presidency,
senhor,
His
presidente
Excellency,
da Câmara dos
President
Deputados do Brasil,
of the Chamber of Deputies,
a senhora
Mr. Arthur
presidente da
Lira,
União Interparlamentar, UIP,
from the
Julia
IPU,
Exxon,
Mrs. Julia
senhora
Axon,
secretária-geral das
Secretary
Relações
General
Exteriores,
of the Foreign
embaixadora
Affairs
Maria
Ministry,
Laura da
Ambassador
Rocha,
Maria Laura da
representando
Rocha,
o senhor ministro de
representing
Estado das
the
Relações
Minister
Exteriores,
of Foreign
chanceler
Affairs,
Mauro Vieira.
Mr. Ambassador
Convido
Mauro
todos
Vieira.
para,
I invite you
posição de
all,
respeito,
in position of
entoarmos
respect,
o hino nacional
to
brasileiro.
hear the Brazilian hymn.
Neste momento, convido todos a assistirem ao vídeo institucional da 10ª Cúpula de Presidentes dos Parlamentos do G20, P20.
Welcome Welcome to Brazil, host of the 10th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit. Welcome to Brasilia, a shining example of modernist architecture in the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Here at the P20, the Palace of the Brazilian National Congress is home to over 30 delegations from across 5 continents, a unique space for parliamentary diplomacy. Deputies and senators from the world's largest economies, along with international organizations and special guests, are coming together to tackle the pressing challenges of our time. Fighting hunger, poverty, and inequality. Promoting social environmental development and energy transition. Reforming global governance. Join us for the 10th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit, connecting parliaments for a fair world and a sustainable planet.
I
would like to initially greet the President of the Chamber of Deputies, Congressman Arthur Lira, in whose name, in the name of Congress and the Federal Senate, I'd like to pay my respects to the dedication and the success of the P20 within the Brazilian National Congress. I'd like to greet the President of the IPU, Ms. Tulia Axon, representing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Secretary General, Ambassador Maria Laura da Rocha, the President of the STM, Brigadier Francisco Joeli Parente Camelo, representing the TCU, Minister Jorge Oliveira. My greetings to the delegations from the G20 that honor us with their presence, from India, South Africa, African Union, Argentina, Canada, China, European Union, France, Indonesia, Italy, Mexico, Korean Republic, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the invited delegations, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Mozambique, Portugal, São Tomé and Príncipe, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, ladies and gentlemen, members of the delegations, of the IPU, Mercosul, Parlaméricas, UN Women, Organization of the United Nations. You are all welcome. It is a reason of great pride to all of us, senators, congressmen of Brazil, to receive this 10th meeting of the Parliamentary Speakers Summit, the P20. Here, we will have the opportunity to exercise the parliamentarian exercise to debate democratically important themes of global reality, themes that require joint understanding as regards the causes and solutions. The group of the 20 was created in 1999 as a cooperation forum in the economic sphere with the objective of developing policies and strategies to face the challenges, the global challenges. Distributed in the 5 continents, the countries that are part represent 85% of the GDP worldwide, 75% of the international commerce, and together have 2/3 of the population of our planet. Today, here, we have representatives of almost all of the world population. That is the dimension of meetings of this size. The decisions taken by the speakers of these parliaments have unquestionable impact on the destination of all nations. And aware of this responsibility and with the objective of making the decision of this group more permeable to democracy, in 2010, the P20 started its work. The decision to incorporate the national parliaments within the discussions of the G20 was truly fundamental. And by means of the actions of these parliaments, it is possible to foment closeness approach between government decisions and the various sectors of society. The parliaments constitute the resonance box of popular demands and have the noble mission of translating the will of the people into laws that guarantee peace, security, and well-being. It is the parliament that approaches the people to the decisions of government. Constituting the P20, the G20 is up to the democratic challenge that is inherent to the good working of the international system, where we demand more dialogue, transparency, and participation of the various nations and their peoples. A fact that is very relevant, especially if we consider the delicate moment where we are, a moment where the democracy is questioned in many areas of the globe. The B20 contributes to the strengthening of the diplomacy, of the parliamentary diplomacy, an important instrument to debate and to find common ways to face problems that affect all countries. I'd like to refer to, for example, migratory flows, the scarcity of food, and climate change, whose consequences do not have boundaries or borders. All of these dimensions are advancing on the P20, making the debates of the G20 more inclusive and democratic. So in that sense, it was natural to advance even more. During the Brazilian presidency of the group, we carried out the first women's parliamentarians meeting in Maceió, in the state of Alagoas, with the motto, building a fairer world and a sustainable planet. Especially in regard to this event, our recognition to the President of the Chamber of Deputies, the Congressman Arthur Lira. On the occasion, over 30 delegations and of international organizations promoted an ample and substantive exchange on laws, best legislative practices, public policies, and other initiatives to face the main challenges of this time. So this is a once-in-a-time event that shows the commitments of the greatest economies of the world in the sense of bringing women to the center of discussions of the great problems of our age. Before the summit of the B20, we carried out in this Congress a parliamentary forum of the G20 with the motto is bound to the recommendations of the first women's parliamentary meeting of the B20 with the presidency of Arthur Lima and with the notable participation of the noble Senator Leila Barros, which is the leader of the Women's Caucus in Brazil, and which I take this opportunity to greet. In the Parliamentarian Forum, we deal priority themes like climate justice, sustainable development, amplification of female representativity in decision forums, and combating inequality. So we would like to start the 10th P20 with the motto, Parliaments for a Fairer World and a Sustainable World. We will have 3 working sessions in which we will talk about combating hunger, poverty, and inequality at the world level, social environmental development, and a inclusive and fair transition, and global governance and the challenges of the 21st century. To combat hunger, poverty, and inequality in our planet is certainly one of our strongest or biggest challenges. Food insecurity, undernutrition is advancing with no check. Data from the FAO shows that the levels of food insecurity, that acute level, have increased in a very worrisome numbers, going from 40% of the population in 2018 to 21.5% in 2023. So undernutrition has affected 700 million people. So it is our task as parliamentary speakers of the G20 to overcome the bottlenecks, be they environmental or economic, that limit food inclusion, nutritional inclusion. So in that sense, we should ask ourselves, how can we help in the definition of policies that can help with food and nutritional security in our countries? Hunger is a social disease with which we cannot accept. Equally challenging is the promotion of social environmental development and the ecological transition that is inclusive. Another problem that has global consequences is natural calamities or those provoked by human actions. Climate change is a reality with which we cannot run away. Natural phenomena like droughts, floods, storms are more and more intense and destructive, leading to many people being displaced, sanitary crisis, and increase of poverty. Parliaments should have the commitment to implement the objectives of sustainable development and of promoting equality. We cannot accept that millions of people should survive in misery, excluded from well-being, and we should assure opportunities that are equal for all. So, for this to happen, we have to adapt the global governance to the challenges of the 21st century. As we know, the international system is facing a multifaceted crisis at the geopolitical, economic, and environmental arenas. World problems of greater complexity and range need a constant improvement of our decision-making processes within these institutions created after World War II, especially in this case the Security Council of the UN, the IMF, and the World Bank. At At the same
instituições
time,
financeiras
the financial
precisam se
institutions
engajar no
need to
enfrentamento das
engage in
desigualdades
facing
e na
inequalities
promoção da economia
and in
verde.
promoting the
Para
green
isso,
economy.
é
And for
necessário
that, it is
direcionar os
necessary to
mecanismos de
direct the
financiamento para promover
finance
avanços
mechanisms to
sociais
promote
e econômicos
social and
com
economic
compromisso
advances
ambiental e atenção aos
with an
desequilíbrios e
environmental
contextos
commitment
nacionais.
and
Não
to
menos
deal with
importante
unbalanced
é o
issues
fortalecimento
within the
do
countries
sistema de transações
and the strengthening
multilaterais.
of multilateral
Nesse
transactions.
sentido, precisamos estar sempre
In
atentos
that sense, we
às
have to be
ferramentas
aware
disponíveis
to the
à
tools that are
Organização Mundial do
available
Comércio,
to the World
a fim de
Trade
que seja
Organization,
aperfeiçoada a
so that
governança
the
do
governance
comércio
of international commerce be
tornando-o
improved,
mais aberto,
making it more open,
e
fair,
sustentável.
and sustainable.
Senhoras e senhores,
Ladies
está
and
muito
gentlemen,
claro
it is very clear that global problems are of such a magnitude that they require joint solutions. No single country could impose its view of the world and solve it
do
alone.
mesmo modo, as
In the
grandes
same way,
questões da atualidade
the great
não
issues of
podem
our
ser
time
entendidas
cannot be understood
separadamente. Não é
separately.
possível
It is not
falar de
possible to
combate à
talk
fome
about
e à
combating
pobreza
hunger and
sem falar em
poverty
transição
without
energética,
talking about
em
energy
mudança
transition,
climática,
climate
em
change,
governança global.
and in global
Tudo
governance.
está
Everything
profundamente
is deeply
conectado.
connected.
O P20,
The
dado o seu peso
P20, given its
socioeconômico e suas dimensões
socio-economic weight
geopolíticas,
and its
é a
geopolitical
cúpula
dimension,
adequada
is
para o
the adequate
encaminhamento dessas
summit
soluções,
to
pois
deal with
reúne
these
as
solutions,
principais
because it
lideranças
joins the main
parlamentares
parliamentarian
mundiais.
leaders
Por meio da
of the world.
diplomacia parlamentar,
Through parliamentarian
temos a
diplomacy,
preciosa
we have the
oportunidade
precious
de
opportunity
debater e encontrar
to debate
formas
and to
comuns
find
de abordar
common ways
questões
of
complexas em
approaching
nível global
complex
e
global
avançar
issues
na
and to
implementação
advance
plena
in
e
the full
efetiva da
and
Agenda
effective
2030
implementation
para o
of the
desenvolvimento sustentável.
of the 2030 agenda, and aware of these three dimensions, social, economic, and environmental, we cannot forget of the importance and attention to digital technologies, especially in artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. When we face these challenges, the Brazilian Congress has worked to produce a legislative framework that is solid, that regulates these digital technologies and media to bring security to these arenas. For that, we need a digital infrastructure that is efficient, inclusive, and resilient, and that promotes global connectivity in order to reduce inequalities, always having the objective of social development centered, focused on the human being. When we start this 10th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit, I would like with optimism to tell you all that we are in a unique situation to build a better world, more inclusive, more fair, with more solidarity and environmentally healthy. That is the beauty of parliamentary life. Through dialogue, understanding, and consensus, we can get long-lasting results in the benefit of the peoples of the world. Together, we will make it happen. Thank you very much.
Neste instante, tenho a honra de conceder a palavra.
This moment, I had the honor to hand the floor to Mr. President of the Chamber of Deputies, Federal Representative Arthur Lira. Your Excellency, President of Federal Senate, Mr. Rodrigo Pacheco, in your name, I would like to salute all the senators of Brazil present here at P20 Summit. Dear Lady Tulia Axon, President of the Interparliamentary Union, and representing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the General Secretary of Foreign Affairs, the Ambassador Maria Laura da Rocha. Once again, salute Mr.
Da mesma forma,
Brigadier,
representando o presidente do Tribunal de Contas da União,
and representing the Federal Court of Accounts, Jorge Oliveira.
aos senhores e senhoras,
To you,
senhoras membros
ladies and gentlemen,
das delegações
members
G20
of
já
the
enumeradas,
G20
saudadas
delegations
pelo
here,
presidente Rodrigo
mentioned by dear
Sejam
President
todos muito bem-vindos
Rodrigo Pacheco,
a
welcome
todos os que participam
to all
desta
who
solenidade de
participate in
abertura da
this
10ª cúpula
opening
do P20 dos Parlamentos
ceremony of
Mundiais.
the
Senhoras e
World
senhores,
Parliament of
sejam todos
P20.
muito bem-vindos ao Brasil
Dear ladies and gentlemen,
para a
welcome
10ª
to Brasilia,
cúpula dos
to
presidentes
the
do
10th
Parlamento do G20.
Summit of the Presidents of Parliament of G20. It is an honor and a satisfaction to receive in this plenary very honorably named after Mr. Ulisses Guimarães, the Chamber of Federal Representatives in Brazil, a stage of important milestones of Brazilian history and a symbol of our country. All the representatives gathered here with the representatives of the P20 speak on behalf of 2/3 of world population. Our countries represent over 85% of all the income generated in the world and 70% of international trade. There are parliaments of all regions representing different cultural and political traditions. This grants a special responsibility to us, providing a special moment for the proposals of the summit of P20 leaders in the 18th and 19th of this month in Rio de Janeiro. Dear ladies and gentlemen, for this 10th summit of G20, we intend to discuss the roles of parliamentary members in 3 axes: the combat to hunger, poverty and inequality, sustainable development in the economical, social and environmental scopes, and the reform of global governance. No one will be excluded from the resemblance of these topics and the ones chosen by the Brazilian presidency of G20. With this convergence, we want to reinforce the synergies and expand the voices of the parliamentary representatives in the summit in Rio de Janeiro. Inequality persists. In some cases, it gets deeper and penalizes hundreds of thousands of human beings with hunger, poverty, and the lack of perspectives overall for women and children. According to the United Nations Program for Development, the Human Development Index in half of the poor countries in the world regressed in the past years. We need to double down our efforts to split in our countries and nations the abundance of goods, services, and wealth that economy and technology provides to us today. In the legislative scope, many things can be done to mitigate the effects of inequality. Here in Brazil, for instance, we are committed with the reform of our tax system. We are moving to a tax model that is more simplified, rational, and fair, correcting a disproportional expense over the poor ones and increasing predictability for the ones who generate income, opportunities, and jobs. In the axis of sustainability, we are looking at urgent challenges of climate change. They are expressed increasingly frequent in extreme events such as floods in the south of Brazil in May and droughts, as we can see in the Amazonic region. Just to name
país.
two situations in our
A
country.
crise climática
Climate change
atinge as populações de
reaches
modo desigual.
populations in
Investimentos e
an
responsabilidades
unequal
na
way.
mitigação dos seus efeitos devem ser,
The
portanto,
movements for responsibility of the effects of these disasters have to be shared in a proportional and fair way.
fortalecer o
It is
diálogo e a
important
cooperação
to strengthen dialogue and cooperation
evitando
among the countries
o
to
recurso a
avoid
fórmulas unilaterais, punitivas
choosing punitive
ou
and unilateral
desequilibradas.
formulas.
Da cúpula do P20
As we participate in the
Nova Delhi,
P20
no ano
Summit
passado,
in New Delhi last
afirmei
year,
que a Câmara dos
I stated
Deputados
that
do Brasil
the
estava
Chamber of Deputies in
comprometida
Brazil was
com uma
committed
pauta verde
to the green
voltada
agenda
para a transição energética e para a
connected
regulamentação
to
do
the
mercado
energy
de
transition
carbono.
and the regulation of carbon market.
Uma grata
Therefore, it is
satisfação
a great
que digo às
satisfaction
senhoras e aos senhores,
to
meus
say
caros
to you,
colegas,
dear
que nos últimos
ladies and
meses
gentlemen, my dear
foram
colleagues, that in the
profícuos os
past
avanços
months
dessa
we
agenda.
had fruitful advancements in this
Aprovamos
agenda. We approved
projetos de lei para
laws,
a exploração
bills of law
eólica offshore,
to regulate the
a produção de
offshore
hidrogênio de
wind
baixa
power
emissão,
exploration
o
and the
Fundo
production
Verde
of
do programa,
low emission
programa de
hydrogen,
aceleração de
the
transição
Green Fund,
energética.
and the program for energetic acceleration. We are also
Regulamentar o mercado
working hard
de
to
carbono no
regulate
Brasil.
the carbon market in Brazil.
Mês passado
Last month,
foi sancionada a lei do combustível do
the
futuro,
law of the future fuel was approved, considered the biggest decarbonization program for the matrix of transport and mobility in the world. Also recently,
legislativo,
the legislative, executive,
e judiciário
and
do Brasil
judiciary
firmaram
branches of Brazil
pela transformação
signed the pact
ecológica
for the
em torno
ecological
de
transformation
medidas
around
que reforçam
measures
o papel
that
central
reinforce
da
the
sustentabilidade
core
ecológica
role
nos
of
planos
ecological
de
sustainability
desenvolvimento
in
para
the
o nosso
development
país.
plans for our country.
Essas ações fortalecem
These actions
marco
strengthen
normativo
a normative
já está
framework
entre os mais avançados
that
e
is
estritos
one of the
em
most
matéria
advanced
ambiental do mundo.
ones in terms of environment in the world.
As credenciais do
We
Brasil
then consolidate the
para
credentials
liderar
of Brazil to be a
o
leader
debate
in the international debate
sobre o
on
desenvolvimento sustentável.
sustainable development.
Senhoras e senhores,
Dear ladies and
em
gentlemen,
nosso terceiro eixo de
in our
debates,
third axis of
trataremos
debates,
nessa cúpula também
we
do
will
papel
deal
dos
in this
parlamentos,
summit the role of the
construção de uma
parliament
governança mundial adaptada
in
ao
the
século
building
XXI.
of a governance adapted to the
Estamos passando
21st
por
century.
período de
We are
grandes
going through
tensões entre
a
diversas
period of
nações.
tensions
Somam-se a esse
among
triste
nations,
cenário
and
crises
it can be counted in this sad
humanitárias,
scenario
climáticas e
humanitarian,
sanitárias
climate,
que
and
têm
sanitary
contribuído
crises
para o
that have
aumento
contributed
das
to the
desigualdades.
increase of
Ao
inequalities.
reiterar nossa mais veemente
To reiterate
condenação
our
a
strong
todas as formas de
condemnation to
terrorismo,
any form of
renovamos o
terrorism, we
a que
renew
todos os parlamentos se
our
engajem
pledge
na
for
promoção da
parliaments
paz,
to engage
com especial
in the
atenção
promotion of
à
peace,
proteção da
especially
vida de civis
protecting the
inocentes.
lives of innocent civil people.
Importante deste
An
processo
important part of this
exige uma
process
renovação da
demands
governança
a
global.
renewal of global
Suas
governance.
instituições e mecanismos
The institutions and
refletem
mechanisms reflect
mundo
a
que não
world
existe mais.
that does not exist anymore.
Suas respostas já não
Their
reúnem a
responses
legitimidade
do not have the necessary
necessária para soluções
legitimacy
que sejam
to
simultaneamente
the solutions that can
eficazes
be
e justas. Como
efficient and
representantes
fair.
dos nossos povos,
As representatives of our peoples,
parlamentos devem
Parliament
aumentar sua mobilização
must
em torno de acordos
increase their
direcionados à
mobilization
paz, ao maior equilíbrio
towards
das relações
international
comerciais,
treaties
à segurança alimentar,
for
à cooperação
the
científica e
balance of
tecnológica,
economical
à sustentabilidade
work
ambiental
and
e à
environmental
prosperidade para
sustainability
todos.
and prosperity to all.
Neste sentido,
In that
a
sense,
renovação do
the renewal of multilateralism proposed by the Pact for the Future, adopted in September at the UN, will only be reached if there is an involvement of parliaments in the creation of proposals to remodel global governance. Ladies and gentlemen,
todas essas discussões,
in all these discussions,
aspecto é incontornável
there is an aspect that is undeniable, the participation of
nos
women
espaços de poder.
in spaces of power. As parliaments, we have the responsibility to promote measures that enable the feminine presence in the decision instances of all scopes. In July, we carried out the first Parliamentary Women Summit, the P20 Women, that produced a set of recommendations in the format of the Charter of Alagoas, coming from the G20 Parliamentary Forum. This unprecedented deed was subscribed as a milestone in the story of P20 and G20, confirming that the feminine representative is paramount and unpostponable for the decision-making in our countries. I would like to reiterate the invitation for the next presidencies of P20 include the P20 women as an essential part of our agenda in parliamentary diplomacy. My dear colleagues, this event restates the paramount role of parliaments in the international context, which is one of the most challenging ones in human history. I'm certain that we will finish this event corresponding to the expectations of our peoples and societies, that the work sessions will be fruitful and will show proposals that will help us offer sustainable solutions for the problems that only the togetherness and the commitment of all can resolve. The building of a better world is in our hands. Thank you very much.
I
would like to thank His Excellency, the President of the Chamber of Deputies of Brazil, Federal Representative Abertura. I would like to render the floor to Tulia Exxon.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, President of the Upper House of Brazil, Senator Rodrigo Pacheco, Your Excellency, President of the Lower House of Brazil, Federal Deputy Arthur Lira, Secretary General of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Maria Laura da Rocha, representing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Mauro Vieira, Honorable Speakers of Parliament, distinguished colleagues, it is a real pleasure for me to be with you today at this 10th Summit of the Speakers of Parliament of G20 member countries. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Brazilian Parliamentary Authority for the wonderful hospitality extended to us, as well as for all the preparations made for our meeting under the overall theme of building a just world and sustainable planet. We convene here in Brasilia to address the pressing challenges of our time and to advance collective action on sustainable, equitable, and inclusive growth. This summit is a powerful forum, bringing together the legislative leaders of the world's largest economies to contribute to global cooperation and explore how parliaments can help tackle the structural issues we face, such as hunger, poverty, inequality, and the urgent need for a just ecological transition. As representatives of the people, we know that strong, coordinated political will and cross-national engagement are essential to achieving sustainable development for all. The challenges we discuss today, from food insecurity and the climate crisis to inequality and fragmented global governance, are interconnected and transnational. The IPU is committed to supporting parliaments in navigating these complexities. fostering collaborative actions and promoting sustainable solutions that serve both our people and our planet. Colleagues, we stand at a crossroad. According to the United Nations, our ability to now achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 is in jeopardy. The COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent economic, social, and environmental crisis have pushed 23 million more people into extreme poverty and left 123 million more people facing hunger in 2022 compared to 2019. This harsh reality is exacerbated by a climate crisis that reached unprecedented levels in 2023, intensifying the vulnerability of over 1 billion people who lack necessities like adequate sanitation, housing, and nutrition. Conflicts, inadequate socio-economic policies, and inaction compound these dire circumstances. Colleagues, we cannot let these trends persist. As parliamentarians, we are uniquely positioned to serve as champions of prevention, mitigation, and action. We can translate international commitments into national realities, hold our governments accountable, and ensure that budgets, policies, and programs reflect the needs of both our citizens and our planet. Parliaments bridge the global and the local, creating a critical link between people and governments. Our role is not limited to national boundaries. Parliamentary diplomacy and international cooperation are more important now than ever. The IPU has been at the forefront of advocating for parliamentary engagement on global issues, especially sustainable development. Drawing on that experience, I propose a consolidated set of priorities to guide parliamentary action. Firstly, we need to prioritize SDGs as a guiding framework. They are collective blueprints for a fairer, a more sustainable future. Parliament should embed sustainable development goals aligned principles in legislation, policies, and budgets to tackle poverty, promote health and education, and advance environmental sustainability. By working within this cohesive framework, we address the interconnected nature of these challenges, ensuring inclusive progress that benefits all of us. Secondly, we need to advance gender equality for inclusive growth. Women's empowerment is central to sustainable development. Parliaments can enact policies that guarantee women's equal access to education, employment, and leadership roles, strengthening economies and communities alike. Addressing gender disparities unlocks the full potential of our societies, creating pathways to the resilience and prosperity. Thirdly, Parliaments must lead in driving climate action and resilience, recognizing that climate change demands immediate and coordinated efforts. By supporting national commitments to climate adaptation, resilience, and emissions reductions, Parliaments can ensure alignment with global climate targets and the SDGs. The IPU's guide, 10 Actions for Stronger National Climate Commitments, offers practical guidance to effective oversight of these commitments, empowering parliaments to hold governments accountable and ensure transparency. Through rigorous oversight, we can scrutinize budgets, monitor policy impacts, and prioritize protection for those most vulnerable to being left behind. Finally, in everything we do, we must promote peace and social stability. Peace is foundational to sustainable development. Parliaments must advocate for policies that foster social cohesion, prevent conflict, creating a stable environment where communities can thrive. I call on you all to take forward our Geneva Declaration from earlier this year on parliamentary diplomacy, building bridges for peace and understanding. Before my concluding remarks, I would like to touch on a topic of governance. Like all human endeavors, our current governance at both national and international levels needs to be revisited for bettering complex challenges we're facing today. In addition to the 2030 Development Agenda and its accompanying SDGs, we now have a comprehensive Pact of the Future that should serve as our shared roadmap towards making this a better and more peaceful world. As a parliamentary community, we must strive to bring a robust parliamentary contribution to the G20 process and to make sure that our words are parallel to action and results. Honourable speakers, dear colleagues, these actions require our steadfast commitment. Let us leverage this summit to forge partnerships and inspire progress. Together, we can lead our nations towards a future that upholds human dignity, preserves our planet, and leaves no one behind. I thank you for listening.
Agradeço a senhora presidente da União
I would like to
Parlamentar.
thank Ms. President
Tenho a honra
of
de conceder a palavra nesse instante
IPU,
à senhora embaixadora
Tulia
Maria
Axon.
Laura da
I would like
Rocha,
to hand the floor to
de
Ms.
Estado
Ambassador
interina das
Maria
Relações
Rocha,
Exteriores.
the interim
Excelentíssimo Senhor Presidente do
Minister
Senado
of
Federal,
Foreign
Senador
Affairs.
Rodrigo Pacheco,
Your
Excelentíssimo
Excellency,
Senhor
President
da
of Senate,
Câmara dos Deputados,
Rodrigo Pacheco,
Deputado Federal
President
Abertura,
of
Senhora Presidente da União
Chamber of Deputies, Rodrigo Pacheco,
Jackson,
the
Senhoras e
President
Senhores Parlamentares,
of
demais
IPU,
representantes de delegação
Ms.
de
Axon,
países e de
and
organismos
all the
internacionais
representatives of
presentes,
countries and international
representantes do corpo diplomático
organisms,
acreditado
and
no
also
Brasil, senhoras
the
e senhores
representatives of
parlamentares
diplomatic
brasileiros,
body.
senhoras e senhores.
Dear
É uma
parliamentarians,
enorme satisfação participar da solenidade
parliamentarians
de
from
abertura da
Brazil,
10ª Cúpula de Presidentes dos
it
Parlamentos
is an honor
do
to
G20
participate in
e
this
novamente
summit
estar
of the
presente
Parliament
em uma
of
atividade do
G20 and be again participating in the P20 activity. I had the honor to be part of the first women's parliamentarian gathering, and I could witness the historic characteristic of that gathering when women of 26 countries could approve the Alagoas Charter of Alagoas. In the presidency of G20, we are in excellent participation. In Rio, in the 18th and 19th of November, will be the apex of our work since November last year when we took office at the presidency of G20. We collected important outcomes within the priorities we chose for the Brazilian presidency: social inclusion, the combat to hunger and poverty, energy transition, sustainable development in all these its three pillars, and the reform of global governance. I'd like to highlight the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty and the call to action for reform of global governance. In a world that is increasingly complex, we count on the Parliament of the countries members of G20 to implement important outcomes to be obtained by Brazilian presidency. I am certain that the Summit of Presidents of the Parliament of G20 that starts today will be the most important contribution to this set of outcomes and efforts that are successful. Thank you all and have a great work.
I'd
like to thank Ms. Ambassador Maria Laura da Rocha, the interim Minister of Foreign Affairs of Brazil.
Antes de encerrar
Before
esta
we
solenidade de
finish
abertura,
this
gostaria de
opening ceremony, I would like to invite you to participate of our work lunch that will take place at 12 noon in the restaurant of the Chamber of Deputies. Our ceremonial teams will help you to conduct delegations to the venue of the lunch. At 2 p.m. sharp, we will start the first working session of the 10th Summit of the President of Parliament of G20, P20, with the topic, the contribution of Parliament in tackling hunger, inequality, and poverty. I'd like to thank the authorities present here and all of you who honored with being here, so I declare this session finished.